It was an unassuming Tuesday morning, and the small restaurant on Main Street was already coming to life. The clatter of pots and pans echoed from the kitchen, where cooks hustled to prepare for the lunchtime rush. The faint aroma of freshly baked bread and sizzling spices wafted through the air, mingling with the morning chill as the front doors opened and closed with the occasional early guest. The restaurant, a quaint yet popular spot named Monroe's Table, was known for its strict rules and no-nonsense service. At its heart was Lisa Monroe, the iron-willed manager who treated her restaurant like a fortress. Lisa had built Monroe's Table from the ground up, pouring her sweat and soul into every detail. She ran her establishment with the kind of precision that left no room for chaos, mistakes, or exceptions. Lisa's law was a term her staff jokingly used, but they knew better than to test her boundaries. Reservation slips were triple-checked, timing was everything, and anyone who thought they could charm their way into a table without planning ahead soon found themselves politely yet firmly turned away. Lisa stood behind the counter, clipboard in hand, her sharp eyes darting between the dining room and the kitchen. She was in her early 40s, with sleek chestnut hair pulled into a tight ponytail and an aura of confidence that made even the most entitled customers pause. Every day was the same routine: arrive early, check inventory, review the guest list, and ensure her team was ready for the surge of customers. Table 5 needs a wipe down before the next seating, Lisa called to a busier as she scanned the floor. And someone tell Mark in the kitchen we're low on pesto. I don't want excuses when the orders start piling in. The staff snapped into action, moving efficiently under her watchful gaze. Lisa thrived on order, and she had little patience for distractions or surprises. As the morning rolled on, the restaurant grew busier. By noon, the tables were full, and the wait list was steadily growing. Monroe's Table had earned its reputation as one of the best spots in town, and people often waited weeks for a chance to dine there during peak hours. Just as Lisa was finishing a quick scan of the reservations list, the front doors opened, and a man stepped inside. His appearance was unremarkable: a plain black hoodie, dark jeans, and sneakers. He carried himself casually, his hands tucked into his pockets as he glanced around the room. Lisa's practiced eyes flicked up, briefly scanning him before returning to her clipboard. Another tech bro, she muttered under her breath, the corner of her mouth curling into a wry smile. Tech workers were a dime a dozen in the city, often wandering into her restaurant without understanding the concept of a reservation policy. The man approached the counter with a polite nod. "Good afternoon," he said in a calm, friendly tone. His voice was smooth but unassuming. Lisa didn't look up immediately. "Reservation name?" she asked, her pen poised over the clipboard. "I don't have one," he replied, his tone light. "Thought I'd try my luck." That was enough to make Lisa lift her gaze, locking eyes with the man for the first time. He had a warm smile, and something about his face seemed familiar, but Lisa couldn't quite place it. She dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. "Sorry," Lisa said firmly, shaking her head. "We're reservation only during lunch hours. We've got a wait list already, and I can't squeeze you in." The man didn't seem fazed. "I understand. Mind if I wait here for a bit?" Lisa hesitated, her instincts flaring. Something about his calm demeanor was almost too calm. Most people would try to negotiate or plead their case, but this man seemed content to accept her answer without resistance. The tension in the air was subtle but noticeable. A few staff members glanced over, sensing the unusual energy in the exchange. Lisa crossed her arms, her tone growing more pointed. "Look," she began, "we're a small place. If you're not here to eat, I'd appreciate it if you didn't take up space. We're pretty busy." The man nodded again, his expression neutral. "Of course," he said. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Lisa watched as he stepped aside, leaning casually against the wall near the entrance. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling, completely unfazed by the dismissal. She found his lack of reaction slightly unsettling. Most people would at least show some frustration, but this man seemed different. Shaking her head, Lisa turned her attention back to the dining room. There was no time to dwell on one customer when she had dozens more to handle. Yet, as the lunch rush continued, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she had seen him before. Lisa's sharp instincts rarely failed her. She prided herself on reading people within moments, a skill honed through years of managing everything from unruly patrons to smooth-talking critics. But this man? He didn't fit into any of her usual boxes. There was something disarming about his relaxed demeanor, like he was accustomed to moving through life on his own terms. As the minutes ticked by, the restaurant buzzed with its usual midday energy. Waiters weaved expertly between tables, balancing trays loaded with steaming plates. Laughter and the clink of cutlery filled the air, blending with the faint hum of background music. Lisa's attention was constantly shifting. Table 6 was lingering too long, Table 9 needed more water. But no matter how much she tried to focus, her eyes kept drifting back to the man by the door. He wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. Just scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing around with a faint smile. Yet, his presence had an undeniable weight. Customers had started noticing him too. Whispers rippled through the room, subtle enough to go unnoticed by most, but Lisa had ears like a hawk. "Do you think it's him?" one customer murmured to their friend. "It can't be," the friend replied, though their gaze lingered on the man. Lisa frowned. Who was him? She scanned the man again, trying to piece together the puzzle. His face nagged at her memory, but the context was missing. He didn't look like the usual local celebrities who sometimes frequented her restaurant, nor did he carry the polished aura of a high-powered executive. Lisa, one of her waiters, Jenna, whispered as she passed by. "I think he's someone important." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Everyone thinks they're important these days," she replied dismissively, though the comment made her chest tighten. Jenna hesitated, glancing toward the man. "No, I mean, really important. I swear I've seen his face somewhere." "Then why don't you ask him for an autograph?" Lisa retorted, her tone laced with dry humor. But even as she brushed it off, her curiosity grew. Lisa hated not knowing things. She thrived on control, on understanding every detail about her restaurant and its patrons. This stranger, with his air of quiet confidence, was an outlier in her meticulously ordered world. The tension continued to build as more customers took notice. Phones discreetly appeared, their users snapping covered pictures or typing hurriedly. Lisa's unease deepened. Was she missing something obvious? "Excuse me," a customer from table 3 called out, pulling her attention. Lisa quickly straightened her posture and strode over, her manager persona fully engaged. "Yes, how can I help you?" The woman at the table smiled apologetically. "Sorry to bother you, but, is that," she leaned in, lowering her voice, "is that Elon Musk over there?" Lisa blinked, momentarily thrown off. "Elon Musk," she repeated, her tone skeptical. The customer nodded eagerly. "It has to be. I mean, look at him. It's the same face, right? And he's here, in the city for some conference or something." Lisa's stomach flipped. Elon Musk? The name carried weight, conjuring images of rockets, electric cars, and headlines about billion-dollar ventures. But that couldn't be right. Why would someone like Elon Musk walk into her modest restaurant without so much as a reservation? Still, the idea planted itself in her mind, stubborn and unshakable. She glanced back at the man, this time scrutinizing him more closely. The resemblance was undeniable. The strong jawline, the sharp yet approachable features, it could be him. "No way," she muttered under her breath, shaking her head. "That's ridiculous." Lisa prided herself on staying cool under pressure, but the whispers were growing louder. Her staff started exchanging glances, some visibly flustered. A young busboy nearly dropped a tray when the man caught his eye and offered a friendly nod. "Lisa," Jenna whispered again, this time more urgently. "You need to do something. What if it is him? And what am I supposed to do?" Lisa snapped back, keeping her voice low. "He doesn't have a reservation, Jenna. Rules are rules." "But..." "No buts," Lisa interrupted, her tone firm. "I don't care if he's Elon Musk, the Queen of England, or Santa Claus. If he wants to eat here, he can book a table like everyone else." Jenna looked unconvinced but wisely held her tongue. Lisa turned away, hoping to regain her focus, but her nerves were starting to fray. The minutes dragged on, each one amplifying the surreal energy in the room. Lisa's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Was she about to make the biggest mistake of her career? Or was this just a case of mistaken identity blown out of proportion by overzealous patrons? Finally, she decided she needed answers. If this man really was Elon Musk, she deserved to know. And if he wasn't, maybe confronting him would put an end to the growing spectacle. Straightening her shoulders, Lisa marched toward the man, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. He looked up as she approached, his expression calm and inviting. "Sir," Lisa began, her voice steady but edged with curiosity. "I couldn't help but notice that, you seem to be attracting a lot of attention." The man chuckled softly. "Am I?" he asked, glancing around the room. "Yes," Lisa said firmly. "Some of our customers seem to think you're someone famous." He tilted his head, his smile widening slightly. "And who do they think I am?" Lisa hesitated. "They think you're Elon Musk." The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied her, his eyes sparkling with amusement. Finally, he said, "Do you think I'm Elon Musk?" Lisa's heart skipped a beat. The way he deflected the question felt deliberate, like he enjoyed keeping her on edge. "I don't know," she admitted, her tone cautious. "Are you?" The man shrugged, his smile never wavering. "Does it matter?" Before Lisa could respond, a commotion broke out near the back of the restaurant. A group of customers had gathered, their phones raised as they whispered excitedly. The tension in the room had reached its breaking point. Lisa turned back to the man, her frustration boiling over. "Look, I don't have time for games," she said, her voice firmer now. "If you're not going to tell me who you are, then I need to ask you to leave. This is a restaurant, not a spectacle." The man's expression softened, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely apologetic. "I'm sorry if I've caused any trouble," he said sincerely. "That wasn't my intention." With that, he pushed off the wall, tucking his phone back into his pocket. As he turned to leave, he paused, glancing over his shoulder. "By the way," he said lightly, "I hear the food here is fantastic. Maybe I'll make a reservation next time." And with that, he was gone, leaving Lisa and the rest of the restaurant in stunned silence. Lisa barely looked up from the reservation book as the man stepped forward, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the counter. "Reservation name?" she asked briskly, her tone clipped and efficient. The man smiled politely, his hands tucked casually into his hoodie pockets. "I don't have one," he admitted, his voice calm. "Thought I'd take my chances." Lisa's eyes snapped up, narrowing slightly as she assessed him. The lunch rush was in full swing, the restaurant alive with the sound of clinking silverware, chatter, and the occasional burst of laughter. Every table was occupied, and the wait list already stretched well into the afternoon. "No reservation, no service," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the noise. "We're packed." The man didn't argue. Instead, he gave a small nod, his expression unbothered. "Understood," he said. Then, after a pause, he added, "Do you mind if I wait here for a while?" The question caught her off guard. It was rare for anyone to respond so calmly to rejection, especially during the midday frenzy. Most people would plead their case, offer to wait indefinitely, or on rare occasions storm off in a huff. But this man? He seemed entirely unfazed, as if the outcome didn't matter to him in the slightest. Lisa frowned, her gaze lingering on him for a moment longer than necessary. Something about his calm demeanor irked her. It wasn't arrogance, exactly, but there was an air of confidence about him that felt out of place in her bustling, no-nonsense restaurant. "Look," she said, her tone sharpening, "this isn't a waiting room. If you're not here to eat, I suggest you move along. We're busy." A few patrons nearby exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued by the exchange. The man, however, remained perfectly composed. He didn't flinch at her words or make any move to leave. Instead, he leaned slightly against the counter, his posture relaxed but not intrusive. "I'm not in anyone's way," he said simply, his tone even. The quiet assurance in his voice made Lisa's jaw tighten. She prided herself on maintaining order, especially during the chaos of the lunch rush. This wasn't the time or place for lingering strangers, no matter how polite they were. "Maybe not," she said, her voice growing colder, "but I don't have time to babysit loiterers. So, unless you're planning to make a reservation for another day, I suggest you find somewhere else to wait." The man didn't react immediately. Instead, he looked around the restaurant, his eyes scanning the crowded tables and the staff bustling between them. His gaze wasn't hurried or critical, if anything, it seemed curious, almost appreciative. "Seems like a great place," he said after a moment, his attention returning to Lisa. "No wonder you're so busy." The comment caught her off guard, and for a brief moment, she felt the faintest flicker of uncertainty. Was he mocking her? Complimenting her? It was hard to tell. "Yeah, well," she said, brushing off the remark, "being great doesn't mean we bend the rules. No reservation, no table." The exchange had started to draw subtle attention from the patrons. At the far corner of the room, a group of young professionals whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing toward the counter. One of them discreetly held up their phone, angling it for what appeared to be a quick photo. Lisa noticed the movement out of the corner of her eye, her irritation deepening. This was exactly the kind of distraction she didn't need. "You're causing a scene," she said, lowering her voice as she leaned slightly closer to the man. "Whatever it is you're trying to do, it's not working." He raised an eyebrow, his expression still calm but now tinged with mild amusement. "A scene? I'm just standing here." Lisa felt her patience slipping. "Look," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "I don't know who you think you are, but we run a tight ship here. If you're not here to eat, you need to leave. Now." The man's smile didn't waver, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something that made Lisa's pulse quicken. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was understanding. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," he said softly, his tone genuinely apologetic. "And I'll leave if that's what you want." Before Lisa could respond, the soft hum of whispers from the nearby tables grew louder. A couple sitting near the window leaned toward each other, their heads tilted in the man's direction. "Is that," the woman began, her voice barely audible over the din. "It can't be," her companion replied, though his gaze remained fixed on the man. Lisa's stomach tightened. She hated losing control of a situation, and right now, control was slipping through her fingers. "Excuse me," one of her waiters whispered as they passed by, leaning close enough for only Lisa to hear. "People are starting to talk. They think he's," the waiter trailed off, glancing toward the man before continuing in an urgent tone. "They think he's someone famous." Lisa stiffened. "Famous?" The waiter nodded. "Yeah. I overheard a couple saying he looks like," she hesitated, then leaned in closer. Elon Musk. Lisa blinked, momentarily thrown off. Elon Musk, she repeated, her voice a mix of disbelief and annoyance. The waiter shrugged, looking as uncertain as Lisa felt. I mean, he kind of does, doesn't he? Lisa turned her gaze back to the man, her heart thudding in her chest. Could it be true? The resemblance was there, she supposed, the sharp features, the quiet confidence. But Elon Musk? Here, in her restaurant? Without a reservation? It seemed too ridiculous to be real. The tension in the room continued to build, the whispers now impossible to ignore. Customers craned their necks for a better look, some of them pulling out their phones to snap photos or search for clues online. Lisa's frustration boiled over. She wasn't about to let her restaurant turn into a circus, no matter who this man was. Straightening her posture, she marched back toward the counter, her heels clicking loudly against the tiled floor. Sir, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The man turned to face her, his expression calm and unbothered. Is there a problem? He asked, his tone polite. Yes, Lisa replied, her voice firm. The problem is, you're causing a distraction. I don't care if you're Elon Musk or just someone who looks like him. This is a restaurant, not a stage. For the first time, the man's composure seemed to falter, just slightly. He tilted his head, his smile fading into something more neutral. Fair enough, he said quietly. I'll leave. And with that, he turned and walked toward the door, his movements slow and deliberate. The whispers followed him, growing louder as he reached for the handle. Just before stepping outside, he paused, glancing back over his shoulder. His eyes met Lisa's, and for a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of something in his gaze. Amusement? Regret? It was impossible to tell. Good luck with the lunch rush, he said lightly, then pushed the door open and disappeared into the afternoon sun. Of course. Here's the continuation of the setting the conflict and tension section, expanded with added layers of narrative depth and tension to reach your desired length. The door closed softly behind him, but the echoes of his departure lingered. For a moment, the restaurant fell into a strange silence, as though every customer and staff member were processing what had just happened. Lisa exhaled sharply, adjusting her apron as if to shake off the unease creeping into her chest. Back to work, everyone, she barked, clapping her hands together. The sharp command snapped the staff into motion, and the restaurant resumed its usual hum of activity. But it wasn't the same. Patrons whispered more animatedly now, their hushed voices carrying snippets of speculation. I swear, that was him. Why would Elon Musk come here? Doesn't he have, like, private chefs? Maybe he's just a look-alike. No way he'd get turned away like that. Lisa heard every word but pretended not to. She busied herself with reorganizing the counter, counting reservations for the next hour, and giving curt instructions to her staff. Still, her mind wandered back to the man's calm demeanor, his deliberate movements, and that strange flicker in his eyes as he left. What if it really was him? The thought irritated her. So what if he was Elon Musk? Rules were rules, and her restaurant didn't make exceptions, not for celebrities, not for billionaires, and certainly not for people who showed up without a reservation during peak hours. By the time the lunch rush began to wind down, the buzz in the restaurant had only grown louder. People lingered over their meals, their eyes flicking toward the door as though expecting the mysterious man to return. A few younger patrons had taken to Googling photos of Elon Musk, comparing them to the images captured on their phones. One particularly bold customer, a teenager sitting with her parents near the counter, turned to Lisa with wide, eager eyes. Excuse me, she said, her voice carrying a mix of awe and disbelief. Was that really Elon Musk earlier? Lisa straightened, her expression hardening. I don't know who he was, she replied curtly. And frankly, it doesn't matter. He didn't have a reservation, so he wasn't staying. The girl's eyes widened further. But, what if it was him? Don't you think? I think, Lisa interrupted sharply, that the rules apply to everyone. Now, if you're done eating, I'd appreciate it if you cleared the table. Other customers are waiting. The girl blinked, startled by Lisa's tone, and quickly turned back to her parents. Lisa felt a twinge of guilt at snapping but pushed it aside. She didn't have time for wild speculation. By late afternoon, the restaurant was finally quiet again. Most of the tables had cleared, leaving only a few stragglers sipping coffee or finishing desserts. Lisa leaned against the counter, reviewing the day's receipts and mentally preparing for the dinner shift. "Hey, Lisa," one of her waiters called out, breaking her concentration. She looked up to see Sarah, a college student who worked part-time on weekends and during busy hours. Sarah had her phone in hand, her face a mix of excitement and nervousness. "You might want to see this," Sarah said, holding the phone out to Lisa. Lisa frowned, wiping her hands on her apron before taking the phone. The screen displayed a social media post, a blurry photo of the man from earlier, standing at the counter. The caption read, "Elon Musk denied service at a local restaurant. This manager doesn't play favorites." Lisa's heart sank as she scrolled through the comments. Wow, she really told him off. Good for her. Rules are rules. Are we sure it's him, though? Looks like it could be a look-alike. If it is him, that's embarrassing for the restaurant. Imagine turning away one of the richest men in the world. The post had already gained hundreds of likes and shares, and it didn't take long for Lisa to notice that other users were tagging the restaurant in their comments. Her stomach churned. This was exactly the kind of attention she didn't want. Great, she muttered under her breath, handing the phone back to Sarah. Just what we need, an internet circus. What should we do? Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern. Lisa hesitated. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't happening and hope it would blow over by tomorrow. But another part of her, a louder, more insistent part, knew that wasn't an option. Nothing, Lisa said finally. We don't engage. Let people talk if they want to. It's not our problem. Sarah nodded but didn't look convinced. Lisa didn't blame her. The dinner rush came and went without incident, but the atmosphere in the restaurant remained charged. By the time the last table cleared and the staff began tidying up for the night, Lisa felt the weight of the day pressing down on her. She retreated to her small office in the back, sinking into the worn leather chair behind her desk. Pulling out her phone, she hesitated before opening the restaurant's social media accounts. As expected, the notifications were endless. Tags, mentions, comments, all speculating about the identity of the mysterious man from earlier. Some users had even posted side-by-side comparisons of the blurry photo and professional images of Elon Musk, drawing arrows and circles to highlight similarities. Lisa groaned, rubbing her temples. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself. Her phone buzzed suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from one of her longtime regulars, a tech journalist named Dan who often stopped by for lunch during the week. Hey, Lisa. Any chance the Musk thing is true? If so, might want to get ahead of the story before it spirals. Lisa stared at the message, her mind racing. Dan wasn't the kind of person to overreact, which made his advice all the more unsettling. Was it spiraling? She quickly typed a response. Not sure if it was him. Honestly, don't care. Just another customer without a reservation. Dan replied almost instantly. Fair enough. But you might care tomorrow. These things have a way of going viral fast. Lisa set her phone down, her chest tightening with a mix of frustration and unease. Viral. The last thing her little restaurant needed was to become the center of a social media frenzy. But as she sat there, staring at the glowing screen, a nagging question crept into her mind. What if it was him? And if it was, what would happen next? The man gave a small nod, his expression unreadable, and stepped aside to a quieter corner of the restaurant. Lisa couldn't help but notice how he seemed utterly unfazed by the mounting attention around him. He simply scrolled through his phone, occasionally glancing up, as if waiting for something or someone. Meanwhile, the whispers among the staff and customers grew louder. "I swear, that's him," said a young man sitting near the window. "I just saw a tweet about him being in the area." "No way," his companion replied, squinting at the man. "Why would someone like Elon Musk come to a place like this?" Lisa caught snippets of their conversation as she bustled past their table, carrying a tray of empty glasses to the back. She clenched her jaw, trying to block out the chatter. It was getting ridiculous. By now, nearly everyone in the restaurant was either whispering or craning their necks to get a better look at the mysterious man. Phones were discreetly or not so discreetly raised, snapping photos or recording short clips. Lisa's frustration bubbled over when she noticed one of her servers, Jamie, openly gawking while holding a tray of drinks. "Jamie," she snapped. "Focus on your tables. This isn't a sideshow." Jamie startled, nearly spilling the drinks. "Sorry, Lisa," he mumbled, hurrying off. Lisa exhaled sharply. She prided herself on running a tight ship, and today's circus was throwing everything off balance. Deciding she'd had enough, she marched back to the man's corner. "Look," she said firmly, crossing her arms. "I don't know what's going on here, but you're disrupting my restaurant. If you're not here to eat, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man looked up again, his expression still calm but now tinged with curiosity. "Am I causing a disruption?" he asked, glancing around. Lisa hesitated. The truth was, it wasn't his actions causing the disruption, it was everyone else's reactions to him. But she wasn't about to admit that. "This isn't a waiting area," she said instead. "And I don't have time for this drama. I have a business to run." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You run a tight ship," he said, his tone neutral. "I respect that." Lisa blinked, momentarily thrown off by his response. She had expected an argument or even a smug retort. Instead, he stood up, sliding his phone into his pocket. "No problem," he said, his voice smooth and unbothered. "I'll get out of your way." And just like that, he walked out. The door had barely closed behind him when the restaurant erupted into murmurs. Did she really just kick him out? Unbelievable. That was definitely Elon Musk. Why didn't she just seat him? He's, like, one of the richest men in the world. Lisa felt the heat rising to her cheeks. She slammed a tray onto the counter, drawing the attention of her staff. "Enough," she barked. "We're here to serve customers, not gossip about them. Get back to work." Her voice carried an edge that silenced the room, and the staff quickly returned to their tasks. But Lisa knew she couldn't silence the whispers entirely. As the afternoon wore on, the buzz in the restaurant didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. Customers lingered at their tables longer than usual, their eyes glued to their phones. Lisa caught bits of conversation that made her stomach churn. "He just tweeted something," someone said excitedly. "Wait, what? What did he say?" "Something about local restaurants and their policies. It's cryptic, but it's definitely about here." Lisa's hands tightened around the edge of the counter. Her mind raced as she tried to decide her next move. She grabbed her phone and quickly searched for Elon Musk's Twitter account. There it was, a single tweet that had already gone viral. "Respect the hustle. Even if they don't recognize you, follow the rules." The post was vague, but the comments underneath it made everything clear. Is he talking about that restaurant on Main Street? LOL, he got kicked out for not having a reservation. Iconic. Good for them. Rules are rules. Imagine not recognizing Elon Musk. I'd die of embarrassment. Lisa groaned, rubbing her temples. This was exactly the kind of attention she didn't want. By the evening, the effects of the tweet were undeniable. The phone at the front desk rang incessantly with calls from curious patrons, reporters, and even a few bold individuals claiming to be from Musk's team. Lisa ignored most of them, focusing instead on keeping her staff on task and the restaurant running smoothly. But as the dinner rush approached, something unexpected happened. A line began to form outside the restaurant longer than anything Lisa had seen before. "What's going on out there?" she muttered, peeking out the window. Her heart sank when she saw the cameras. News crews had arrived, and reporters were already interviewing people in the line. Jamie approached hesitantly, holding a tray of water glasses. "Lisa, I think you should see this," he said, holding out his phone. Lisa sighed and took it, bracing herself. A live news stream was playing, showing the scene outside her restaurant. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Local restaurant manager stands firm, Elon Musk turned away." Lisa's stomach turned. This wasn't just local gossip anymore, it was national news. As the dinner crowd poured in, the atmosphere inside the restaurant was electric. Customers whispered excitedly as they scanned the room, as though expecting Elon Musk to make a dramatic return. Lisa did her best to maintain control, but she could feel the tension building. Then, just as she was beginning to think the worst was over, the door opened. A hush fell over the room as the man from earlier stepped back inside. He wasn't alone this time. The moment the man stepped back inside, the room seemed to hold its breath. His calm presence commanded attention, but what struck Lisa was the group that accompanied him. Two sharply dressed individuals followed closely behind, their confident strides and professional demeanor suggesting they were part of his team. Lisa froze, gripping the counter as her mind raced. Was he here to stir up more trouble? Or maybe to prove a point? The whispers started immediately. He came back. Who are those people with him? Do you think he's going to make a scene? Lisa steeled herself, straightened her posture, and walked toward the group. She couldn't afford to lose control of her restaurant, no matter who this man was or what he wanted. "Back again," she said, her tone clipped. The man smiled faintly, his expression calm yet unreadable. "I was hoping we could start over," he said simply. Lisa's eyes flicked toward his companions. One of them, a woman with a sleek tablet in hand, stepped forward. "My name is Christine," she said smoothly. "I'm part of Mr. Musk's team. We'd like to discuss a possible reservation for dinner tonight." The name hit Lisa like a brick wall. Mr. Musk. The realization fully landed, though deep down, she had already known. This wasn't just a casual visitor or an eccentric customer. This was Elon Musk, the Elon Musk. But Lisa wasn't about to let herself be rattled. Rules were rules, and no one, no matter how wealthy or famous, was above them. "I appreciate the formality," Lisa said, her voice steady, "but as I told Mr. Musk earlier, we're fully booked. We don't take walk-ins during peak hours." Christine's eyebrows lifted slightly, as if surprised by Lisa's unwavering stance. "We understand," she said, her tone measured. "However, we'd like to offer to book the entire restaurant for the evening. We're willing to compensate you generously for the inconvenience." Lisa's jaw tightened. Booking the entire restaurant would mean turning away her loyal customers, some of whom had made reservations weeks in advance. The offer was tempting, no doubt it would be a financial windfall, but it also went against everything she believed in as a business owner. "I'm afraid that's not possible," Lisa replied firmly. "My priority is to serve the customers who've already made reservations." The tension in the room was palpable. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, and a few bold customers leaned in, trying to catch every word. Elon raised a hand, signaling Christine to step back. He met Lisa's gaze, his expression thoughtful. "I respect that," he said, his tone sincere. "It's rare to find someone so committed to their principles." Lisa blinked, momentarily caught off guard by his response. She had expected pushback, maybe even an argument, but instead, he seemed impressed. Despite Elon's calm demeanor, the energy in the restaurant remained electric. Customers whispered and snapped photos, their excitement growing with every passing moment. Lisa, however, was focused on maintaining order. She directed her staff to stay on task and tried to tune out the buzz around her. But it was impossible to ignore the man himself. Elon didn't leave. Instead, he and his team took a seat in the waiting area, as though they had all the time in the world. Lisa frowned. What was his angle? Was he trying to prove something? As the evening wore on, Lisa began to notice subtle changes in the room. The staff seemed more attentive, the customers more animated. It was as if Elon's mere presence had elevated the atmosphere. Jamie, carrying a tray of drinks, stopped by the counter. "Lisa," he whispered, glancing toward the waiting area. "I think he's winning people over just by sitting there." Lisa shot him a look. "Focus on your tables," she said sharply. But inwardly, she couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. By 7 p.m., the dinner rush was in full swing, and the restaurant was buzzing with activity. Lisa was in her element, moving efficiently from table to table, ensuring everything ran smoothly. But her focus was disrupted when one of her regulars, Mrs. Henderson, approached the counter. "Lisa, dear," the elderly woman began, her voice low. "I couldn't help but notice that gentleman over there. Is that really who I think it is?" Lisa sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yes, Mrs. Henderson. It's Elon Musk. But don't worry, he's not causing any trouble." Mrs. Henderson chuckled softly. "Trouble? Oh, no, my dear. I was just going to say, it's quite something to see a man of his stature waiting patiently like everyone else. Says a lot about him, doesn't it?" Lisa blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't considered that angle. As the night progressed, Lisa began to notice more little things. Elon's team remained polite and unassuming, making no demands. Elon himself even struck up quiet conversations with a few patrons near the waiting area, his tone warm and approachable. Despite her initial frustration, Lisa couldn't help but feel a grudging respect. He wasn't throwing his weight around or trying to use his influence to get special treatment. The turning point came when a small commotion broke out near one of the tables. A young boy had accidentally spilled his drink, and his parents were scrambling to clean up the mess. Before Lisa or any of her staff could step in, Elon rose from his seat and approached the family. "Let me help," he said, grabbing a handful of napkins from a nearby table. The parents looked stunned. "Oh, no, Mr. Musk, you don't have to." "It's no trouble," he replied, smiling as he crouched down to help clean up the spill. The entire restaurant fell silent, watching the scene unfold. Lisa stood frozen behind the counter, her heart pounding. This wasn't the arrogant, entitled billionaire she had imagined. This was someone willing to roll up his sleeves and lend a hand. As the evening drew to a close, Lisa found herself reflecting on the day's events. She had started the day with a clear sense of right and wrong, of rules and boundaries. But now, she realized, there was more to people than first impressions. And as she watched Elon Musk help a family clean up a spilled drink in the middle of her restaurant, she couldn't help but wonder if she had underestimated him. The room went silent for a moment, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. Lisa stood there, her thoughts a blur. She had just spent the entire afternoon treating a man like any other customer, perhaps even with more than a hint of disdain, and now the truth hit her like a freight train. The man she had so casually dismissed was none other than Elon Musk, one of the most recognizable names in the world. "Wait, Elon Musk?" Lisa repeated, her voice trembling slightly. Elon just nodded, still calm, unbothered by the sudden spotlight. His hands were folded in front of him as if he had known all along that this moment was coming. "Yes," he said simply, his tone almost apologetic. "That's what they call me." Gasps echoed around the restaurant. Customers quickly gathered their phones, some snapping pictures, others whispering excitedly. It was as if the entire atmosphere shifted, as if a whole new energy filled the space. The casual restaurant had just become a celebrity hotspot, and Lisa found herself at the center of it all, the one who had treated this man as just another customer, and now, everything had changed. Lisa felt a wave of heat rise up her neck. How could I have been so blind? The awkwardness of the moment settled in. The man she had turned away so firmly, the one she'd refused to bend the rules for, was now the very same person everyone was whispering about. Elon Musk wasn't just anyone. He was the Elon Musk, the billionaire founder of SpaceX and Tesla. One of the richest men in the world. A figure whose name was synonymous with innovation and controversy alike. And yet, here he was, standing in her restaurant, unassuming, almost humble, waiting patiently. Despite the enormity of his success, he wasn't demanding special treatment. He wasn't playing the card that most people in his position would have. But that didn't make the situation any easier for Lisa. In fact, it made it worse. As her mind raced, she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had always prided herself on running her restaurant with strict rules, believing that no one, no matter who they were, should be above the guidelines she set. But now, she had to face the fact that she had just turned away one of the most powerful figures in the world. A man who had the resources to make or break a business. The murmurs around the room grew louder. People whispered in excitement, some still staring at their phones, while others tried to act casual, pretending not to care. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest as she considered her options. Should she apologize? Should she backtrack and offer him a free meal? She wasn't even sure if that would be enough. There was no way to undo what had already been said, no way to undo the tension that had already built. It wasn't just about the rules anymore. It was about her pride, her reputation. She couldn't let herself look weak in front of her staff or the customers who had been watching the entire exchange. But was that the right thing to do? Before she could decide on her next move, Elon broke the silence, his voice steady and surprisingly warm. "You don't have to be sorry, Lisa," he said, as though reading her thoughts. "You were doing your job. I understand." Lisa blinked, caught off guard by his calm, almost kind response. He wasn't angry, wasn't throwing his weight around. He wasn't demanding an apology or a free meal. He was just understanding. "I know it's not easy," he continued, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You have rules for a reason. And I respect that. But sometimes, people make mistakes. It's how we handle them that matters." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. How we handle them? Was he giving her permission to correct her mistake? Or was he simply being kind, letting her save face without making a scene? Her mind spun with questions, her fingers twitching at her sides. The restaurant had already been thrown into chaos. The last thing she wanted was to make things worse, but the offer to move past the mistake felt like a lifeline. She looked around the room. Her staff had stopped working, their eyes wide, taking in the exchange. A few patrons still had their phones out, their expressions a mixture of excitement and curiosity. There was no going back. She had to make a decision now. I'm sorry," Lisa finally said, her voice firm but apologetic. She took a deep breath, her shoulders square. I should have recognized you. I let my rules get in the way of common sense. The words tasted strange on her tongue. She was used to being the one in control, the one who didn't back down. But here, in this moment, she realized that sometimes humility was the most important thing. Elon's smile grew a little wider, his eyes glinting with amusement. No harm done, he said casually. But I think we can work something out, don't you? Lisa felt a sense of relief wash over her, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had been so focused on keeping her ground, she hadn't even stopped to think about what might happen if she simply acknowledged the situation. Now that the air had cleared, things felt a little easier to handle. Let's see what we can do, she said, smiling back at him. I think we can find a table for you after all. The mood in the restaurant shifted again, though this time it was different. Instead of the tense, almost awkward silence, there was an air of camaraderie. People were no longer staring at Elon as if he were some distant celebrity, but instead, they were eager to see how the situation would resolve. The earlier tension had dissolved, replaced by a kind of collective curiosity. Lisa led Elon and his team to a table near the back of the restaurant, away from the main rush, so as not to disturb the other diners. Her staff watched her, no longer uncertain but ready to follow her lead. Lisa had managed to turn the situation around, and the customers seemed pleased with how it had unfolded. The world-renowned entrepreneur wasn't some untouchable figure anymore, he was just another customer, sitting down to enjoy a meal. As she went about her duties, ensuring the other tables were tended to, Lisa couldn't shake the thought that something profound had just happened. Elon Musk, for all his fame and fortune, had handled the situation with grace and patience, and that made all the difference. Later that evening, just as the restaurant began to quiet down, Lisa returned to check on Elon and his team. She had expected him to be deep in conversation with his colleagues, discussing business or some cutting-edge innovation, but instead, she found him smiling and chatting with a few of the regulars at a neighboring table. He was down to earth, cracking jokes and laughing as if he were just another person enjoying a meal. Lisa stood back for a moment, watching the scene unfold. She had come to a conclusion. The rules she had clung to so tightly were important, yes, but it was the human connection, the ability to treat everyone with respect, no matter who they were, that truly mattered. It had taken a mistake, a very public one, for her to realize this. But in the end, she was grateful. Grateful for the chance to learn, to grow, and to understand that there were sometimes greater lessons to be learned beyond the walls of her restaurant. As the night drew to a close and Elon prepared to leave, he stood up from his table, turning to Lisa. "Thanks for the meal, Lisa," he said with a genuine smile. "It was a pleasure." Lisa returned the smile, feeling a strange sense of warmth. "No, thank you," she replied. "For showing me that it's okay to make mistakes, and for reminding me that there's always room to learn." Elon nodded, and with that, he and his team left, disappearing into the cool night air. Lisa stood there for a moment, reflecting on the evening. Some lessons, it seemed, came in the most unexpected of packages. Lisa stood in the middle of the bustling restaurant, her mind racing as the door swung shut behind Elon Musk. The silence that followed was heavy, as if the world had suddenly paused. For a moment, everything seemed to blur, the clatter of dishes, the murmurs of the staff, the tapping of phones all faded into the background. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she could feel the eyes of the customers on her. The weight of the situation slowly sank in, but she refused to let it show. She was the manager. This was her restaurant, and she'd always prided herself on sticking to the rules. She wasn't about to let a famous billionaire make her second-guess herself, no matter how much her instincts screamed at her to apologize. But the way Elon Musk had spoken, so calm and respectful, had thrown her off. He hadn't gotten angry. He hadn't demanded special treatment. Instead, he had respected her decision, even after the embarrassing mistake she made. His comment about possibly buying the place had thrown her completely for a loop, and it left her wondering just how far his reach went. For a long moment, Lisa stood still, her hands gripping the counter. She could hear the buzz of conversation starting up again around her, the tension in the air slowly lifting. Her staff exchanged glances, and some customers began whispering about what had just happened. One of her servers, Clara, walked up to her with wide eyes. "Did that just really happen?" Lisa nodded, still processing. "Yeah. It did." Clara hesitated before asking, "What are you going to do now?" The question hung in the air. Lisa wasn't sure herself. The man had respected her rules, but something about his visit left her feeling unsettled. Maybe it was the way he had handled the situation with such grace. Maybe it was the comment about buying the restaurant. Whatever it was, it felt like a moment she couldn't easily shake off. "I don't know yet," Lisa answered, her voice steady but unsure. "Let's just keep things running. I'll think about it." As the day wore on, the restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The lunch rush subsided, and customers began to trickle out. But the conversation about Elon Musk's brief visit continued. Lisa overheard bits and pieces of it, people speculating about whether he'd really buy the place, how they'd never expected a billionaire to walk in and be so humble. At first, she felt embarrassed. She had turned away one of the wealthiest men in the world without even realizing it. But slowly, that feeling shifted. She realized that she had acted with integrity, standing by the rules that had made her restaurant what it was. No one, not even a billionaire, was above those rules. The more she thought about it, the more she came to admire Elon's calm response. He hadn't made a scene. He hadn't tried to pressure her. He'd respected her decision. Just before closing time, as Lisa was cleaning up, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, half expecting it to be another comment or question about what had happened earlier. But when she saw the name on the screen, her stomach dropped. It was a message from her boss, Henry. "Lisa, I just got a call from Elon Musk's team. They want to meet with you tomorrow. Don't worry, everything's fine. Just be ready." The message left her in stunned silence. Her fingers hovered over the screen, unsure what to say. A part of her wanted to laugh. What could he possibly want with her? She had refused service to him just hours ago. And yet, there it was, a message that suggested everything had taken a very unexpected turn. The next morning, Lisa found herself standing outside the restaurant, waiting for Elon Musk's team to arrive. She hadn't slept much the night before, her mind swirling with thoughts of the meeting. She wasn't sure what was going to happen, but she knew this could be a defining moment in her career. The black SUV pulled up in front of the restaurant, and Lisa's heart skipped a beat. Two men in dark suits stepped out, followed by a third, who looked slightly more relaxed in a polo shirt. One of the men approached Lisa and extended his hand. "Ms. Monroe?" he asked, his voice smooth and professional. Lisa shook his hand, trying to remain composed. "Yes, that's me. We're here to discuss a few things with you," the man said. "Mr. Musk is very interested in your restaurant." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure what you mean." "We don't." "Mr. Musk," the man interrupted gently, "is very impressed with your establishment. He was quite taken with your attention to detail and your dedication to your staff. He's been watching your restaurant for some time now." Lisa felt a wave of shock wash over her. She had never imagined that someone like Elon Musk would be paying attention to her little restaurant. She thought back to the comment he'd made the day before, about possibly buying it, and now it seemed that it wasn't just a passing joke. "What exactly does he want?" she asked, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions inside her. "We're here to discuss the possibility of a partnership," the man said. He'd like to meet with you and explore the idea of expanding your restaurant's brand, perhaps even turning it into something much bigger. But, of course, he respects your vision and would want to make sure it aligns with what you want. Lisa's mind raced. A partnership? Expanding? Turning her restaurant into something bigger? She had never imagined that her hard work, her strict policies, would lead to something like this. Mr. Musk would like to meet you inside, the man continued. Shall we go in? With her heart pounding, Lisa nodded. She led them inside, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. The restaurant, once just a place she managed with pride, was now the center of something much larger than she had ever imagined. Elon Musk was waiting for her at a table in the back, his calm demeanor unchanged. He rose as she approached and gave her a small smile. Ms. Monroe, he said, his voice warm. It's good to finally speak with you. Lisa sat down across from him, still in shock. She couldn't help but admire the way he handled himself, the way he had handled the situation the day before, and now, how he treated her with such respect. It was clear that he wasn't here to make demands, but to discuss possibilities. I have to admit, Lisa began, still gathering her thoughts, I didn't expect to be meeting you today. Elon smiled. I understand. The whole situation was unexpected for both of us. But that's the way life works sometimes. We find ourselves in strange moments. And we make decisions based on what we believe is right. Lisa nodded, taking in his words. She could see that, despite his fame and fortune, Elon Musk was a man who believed in respecting others and standing by his principles. His humility had left an impression on her, and now, she had to decide what to do with the opportunity before her. I never imagined I'd be sitting here, Lisa said finally. But I'm listening. What do you have in mind? Elon leaned forward slightly, his eyes focused on her. I've seen what you've built here. You have a unique restaurant, one that's built on integrity, quality, and loyalty to your staff and customers. I want to help you grow that. But I don't want to change the core of what makes this place special. Lisa's mind swirled. Could she really make her restaurant bigger without losing what made it hers? Could she trust someone like Elon Musk to respect her vision? She thought back to the moment when he'd left the restaurant the day before, with nothing but respect for her rules. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the opportunity of a lifetime. A chance to take her small restaurant to new heights without compromising the values she had worked so hard to build. What are you suggesting? She asked, her voice steady. I'm suggesting a partnership, Elon said. We can work together to expand your brand, bring your restaurant to more people, and maybe even build a chain of places that stay true to the original spirit. You'll still have full control. I'll just be here to support you. For the first time that day, Lisa allowed herself to smile. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it was one that she could shape on her terms. I think we can talk about that, Lisa said, her voice confident. Let's see where this partnership can take us. As they shook hands, Lisa knew that this moment would mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life. One that she had never anticipated, but one that had come about because she had stood by her principles. Even when faced with the unexpected, even when confronted by the wealthiest man in the world, Lisa had stayed true to herself. And in doing so, she had opened the door to a future she had never dreamed possible. By the end of the day, Lisa Monroe found herself reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had unfolded. The lunch rush had come and gone, but the echoes of what had happened remained with her long after the last customer had left. The restaurant, usually bustling with the hum of normality, now felt eerily quiet. Lisa wiped down the counter, her hands moving mechanically, while her mind raced, replaying the encounter over and over again. Word had spread quickly, and the incident was no longer just a topic of conversation within the walls of her restaurant. It had gone viral. News outlets, Social media influencers, and people from all over the world were talking about the incident at the little restaurant on Main Street. And Lisa, for the first time, found herself at the center of an unexpected storm. Some of the comments were harsh. Critics labeled her as rude and inflexible. How could she turn away one of the richest men in the world, they asked. What kind of manager refuses service to a high-profile person like that? Others wondered if it was a publicity stunt, or worse, if she had blown her one chance at fame and fortune. But amidst the criticism, there was another wave of support. Many admired Lisa's unshakable adherence to the rules, especially when faced with a situation so out of the ordinary. They praised her for staying true to herself and her values, for not bending just because someone famous walked through her door. To them, she was a symbol of integrity, someone who had stood her ground, no matter the cost. A few hours later, Lisa was sitting in her office, scrolling through her phone when she saw the tweet from Elon Musk. Her heart skipped a beat. She had expected him to be upset, to blast her on social media, or even worse, to take some kind of revenge. But his tweet was light-hearted and kind. Tried to grab lunch at this amazing little spot. Got turned away, my bad, for no reservation. Great rules, though. Respect. Lisa read the words several times, as if trying to process their meaning. In a world where power and status often overshadow basic respect, Elon Musk had posted a message that felt oddly grounded and humble. It was as if, in that one simple tweet, he had reinforced everything Lisa had stood for, everything that had made her so confident in her actions. She couldn't help but smile to herself. The message was clear: respect doesn't come from bending the rules, but from standing by them, whether you're an ordinary diner or a billionaire. Lisa had lived by that principle for years, and even though the situation had tested her, it was ultimately that same commitment to her values that had earned her respect, both from Elon Musk and from countless others. Lisa leaned back in her chair and thought about how often people get caught up in the rush to succeed, to climb higher, to network and please those who can offer them more. She had always believed that success didn't come from compromising who you were or what you stood for. Instead, it came from doing the right thing, even when it was difficult, even when no one was watching. It hadn't been easy, standing up to a man like Elon Musk. In the moment, she had felt the weight of his fame, his wealth, and his status. She had felt small, uncertain, and maybe even a little intimidated. But when it came down to it, she had done what she had always done. She had respected the rules of her restaurant, which were the backbone of everything she had built. And in doing so, she had earned something far more valuable than a fleeting moment of fame. She had earned the respect of everyone in that room, including Elon himself. For a moment, Lisa allowed herself to reflect on how far she had come. She had started at the restaurant as a young, eager manager, trying to prove herself. Over the years, she had built something meaningful, something that wasn't just about food or service, but about trust, consistency, and integrity. She hadn't always gotten things right, but she had never compromised on what mattered most to her. Now, with the unexpected attention she was receiving, Lisa realized that this moment, this decision had put her on a different path. There was no telling what would come of the partnership Elon Musk had offered. Perhaps it would turn out to be everything she had hoped for. Or maybe it would be a challenge she wasn't ready for. But either way, it was an opportunity, and it was up to her to decide how she wanted to move forward. Her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from Henry, her boss. He had seen the tweet, and the tone of his message was unexpectedly positive. "You did the right thing, Lisa. People are talking. And they're talking about you for all the right reasons. Let's meet tomorrow and discuss next steps. We'll take this as it comes." Lisa felt a surge of pride. She had stuck to her guns, and now the world was taking notice. But even more than that, she had proven something to herself. She had reminded herself that it was okay to be true to your values, even when the world seemed to be pushing you in the opposite direction. She hadn't needed to make concessions, to apologize, or to bend to the whims of someone more powerful. She had simply needed to stand firm. As the evening wore on and the restaurant began to quiet down, Lisa reflected on the impact this experience had on her. It wasn't just about business or fame. It was about something more profound, something that resonated deep within her. It was about living authentically, standing by your beliefs, and trusting that doing the right thing would always have its own rewards, even when they weren't immediately clear. Lisa knew she would face more challenges in the future, more difficult decisions and moments of doubt. But now, she was more confident than ever that the path she had chosen, the one that prioritized respect, integrity, and authenticity, was the right one. She had proven to herself that she could handle whatever came her way, even when the stakes were high. The lesson was simple but powerful. In a world where it's easy to get lost in the noise of expectations and pressures, Lisa had reminded herself and everyone watching that staying true to your principles was the key to true success. The world might try to push you off course, but if you hold your ground, if you stay firm in your beliefs, you'll not only earn respect from others, you'll gain it from yourself. Lisa stood up from her desk and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street below. The city was beginning to wind down for the night, but she knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter for her restaurant, and for her. Whatever the future held, she was ready to face it with the same strength and confidence that had gotten her to this point. And with that, she took a deep breath, knowing that the best was yet to come.